Chapter 7 The Home Underground. One of the first things Peter did next day was to measure Wendy and John and Michael for hollow trees. Unless your tree fitted you perfectly, it was difficult to enter and leave the underground home. Once you fitted, you breathed in at the top and you went down at exactly the right speed. To go up, you breathed in and out and wriggled. It was easy when you got the hang of it, and after a few days' practice, they could go up and down like buckets in a well. Wendy, John and Michael loved their underground home. It was a large room with mushrooms growing out of the floor, which the boys used as stools. A nether tree tried hard to grow up through the center of the room, but every morning they sawed the trunk so it was level with the floor. By tea time it was always about 2 feet high, and then they put a door on top of it and used it as a table. As soon as they cleared away, they sawed off the trunk again, so there was more room to play. There was an enormous fireplace for drying washing, and the bed was tilted against the wall by day and let down at 6:30 when it filled nearly half the room, and all the boys slept in it. Tinker Bell lived in a small hole in the wall. She had made it into a beautiful little bedroom with different bedspreads to match the fruit blossoms that were in season. She hated the rest of the house and looked down her nose at it. Wendy was so busy looking after the lost boys that there were whole weeks when she was underground. She did lots of sewing and all of the cooking. The only problem was they never knew if a meal would be real or make-believe. This all depended on Peter. He could eat real food if it was part of a game, but he didn't need it to feel full. Make-believe was so real to him that during a meal you could see him getting rounder. This was difficult for the children because they had to follow Peter's lead, even though unlike him they needed to eat real food every day. He would only let them eat real food if they could prove they were getting too thin for their trees. After all the boys had gone to bed, Wendy loved to sit down and sew. This was when she made new clothes for them and put extra pads on the knees of their trousers, which were always wearing thin. It filled her with happiness to help them in this way. Wendy did not really worry about her father and mother. She was completely confident that they would always keep the window open for her and her brothers to fly back through. What did disturb her was that John hardly remembered his parents now, and Michael believed that she was really his mother. These things scared her a little, and she tried to fix the old life in their minds by setting them examination papers on it, like the ones she used to do at school. The other lost boys wanted to join in, and they sat round the table, writing and thinking hard about the questions she had written. They were the most ordinary questions. For example, what was the colour of Mother's eyes? Who was taller, father or mother? Was Mother blonde or brunette? Describe the way that Father laughs. Describe the kennel and who lives there. When the boys could not answer a question, they had to write a cross next to it, and it was dreadful how many crosses John made. With great hope in his heart, slightly replied to every question, but he always came last because his answers were so ridiculous. This was very sad to see. Peter did not compete. For one thing, he hated all mothers except Wendy. For another, he was the only boy on the island who could neither write nor spell even the smallest word. Peter often went out alone, and when he came back they were never certain if he had had an adventure or not. He sometimes forgot them so completely that he said nothing about them. Adventures, of course, happened every day, but around this time Peter invented a new game with Wendy's help. This game consisted of pretending not to have adventures, and Peter really enjoyed playing it. He had to do the sort of thing John and Michael had been doing all their lives. For example, he had to sit on a stool and throw a ball into the air, or he had to push one of the lost boys and get them to push him back, or he had to go out for walks and come back without having killed a single wild animal. He loved to tell everyone that he had gone walking for the good of his health. Seeing Peter sitting and doing nothing on a stool was very funny because he could not help looking very serious while he was doing it. The reason for this was that he was trying very hard not to laugh. Sitting still seemed to him to be such a comic thing to do. They had so many real adventures together too. For example, Wendy saved the day by snatching the poisonous pirate's cake. Off the boy so many times that it became as hard as stone and was used as a missile, and Cook fell over it in the dark, and in the end none of the boys were harmed by it at all. Another adventure started with the Neverbird. She had built her house in a tree overhanging the Mermaid's Lagoon, and it had fallen into the water. This brave and faithful bird had stayed with her eggs on the nest floating on the surface of the lagoon, and Peter had given orders to everyone on the island that she was not to be disturbed. The Neverbird was so touched by Peter's kindness that she never forgot what he had done for her, and that adventure leads to one of the most important adventures ever to have happened at the Mermaid's Lagoon.